are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Eddie Jackson has been the target of Bears fans' criticism, and rightfully so. But I think all of the emphasis and outrage on his tackling in particular misses some of the greater issue with Jackson this year. This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm an analyst for Pro Football Focus, and I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook, join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for more Bears talk, and make sure that you subscribe to the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our daily video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen each and every day. We're here for you 5 days a week. And on the show today, we will hear from Bears safety Eddie Jackson addressing his own tackling issues, acknowledging that, there's probably been too many of those, but kind of going through what he's been seeing on the field, what he's been trying to emphasize with himself, what the coaching points have been, and why it's not fair, why he says it's not fair to question his effort as opposed to maybe the technique or the finishing on that one. So we'll hear sort of his perspective, and then we'll look at why I think maybe we're putting too much of our attention on the wrong thing when it comes to the missed tackles, and really where I think the issue should be a little bit more in focus. And then we have to wrap up with what we missed yesterday with Matt Nagy testing positive for COVID-19 and kind of figuring out what the impact of the missing head coach will be on this team as they get ready for the San Francisco 49ers on Halloween. We start with Eddie Jackson, though, because he's been an easy target when the defense struggles. I've been right there along everyone else, critical of the Bears' top safety, a player that we've seen play at a very, very high level in the past in this Bears defense. After struggling a little bit the last couple of seasons, we kind of thought defensive coordinator Sean Desai will get back to more of the Vic Fangio style of defense, and that should be supposed to be at least what cures Eddie Jackson on paper there. But instead, we've seen more struggles, and we've seen more missed tackles, and we've seen the defense as a whole having some ups and downs in there. And it becomes pretty obvious and apparent when, Eddie Jackson is the safety on a play and misses a tackle, and maybe it ends up going for a touchdown as a result. And it's one of those kind of mistakes that we sitting at home watching the broadcast can more easily and obviously see, because it's right at the ball. It's right what the cameras are capturing. And sometimes it can result in very big plays that have drastic impacts on the game. And so it becomes I wouldn't say a low-hanging fruit, because it's a justifiable criticism of Eddie Jackson. But the safety himself, he kind of draws a line here. I think it kind of started when Lance Briggs, the former linebacker, was publicly critical of Eddie Jackson's effort on the tackling. And Jackson kind of pushed back and was saying, hey, man, don't question my effort. We're all out here trying to tackle. He's like, no one's out there intentionally missing tackles. It's not because we don't care or we're not trying hard enough. But he kind of at least addressed from a technique standpoint some of what's been going on the back end and what he's focusing on, and I guess some of the different juggling acts that he's taking from the safety position.
Eddie, your tackling has been scrutinized for at least the last 2 years. I mean, taking everybody else's opinions out of it, how do you think you're doing in that area? In an area that, if I'm remembering right, you talked about in August wanting to do better this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'm doing pretty solid. I just got limited the open field tackles. That's something that I've been working on. I work on it in practice and everything, but like I said, effort is doesn't play in a role in that. I'm out there giving everything I got. So just got to continue to, work on the little things, taking angles and, wrapping and things like that. But I feel like it's been pretty good, and it's continued to, improve. And that's for us as a defense as a whole.
When you say wrapping, is that part of the issue for you that you're trying to correct mentally, as opposed to just trying to deliver a big hit or trying to get the ball out without necessarily making sure you're doing a fundamental wrap up and tackle?
Yeah, you just got to wrap, because, sometimes you can go in the game, especially when you're trying to make a play, you want to go and try to lay a big hit on the guy, try to knock the ball out, or when you're trying to script at the ball, but you want to you have to get the guy on the ground. We coach, first man and second man to the ball. That's the type of thing we coach. So we just got to continue to, stay on top of those keys. And that's something that you got to put into your mind, when you're going in on the tackle, like, okay, just remember the wrap, you know what I mean? Because sometimes, like I said, when you're going out there, you just flying around, man, and you're just trying to make plays, all that stuff kind of leave, and you just going out there trying to be aggressive. And sometimes it can pay off, and sometimes it can hurt you. So just got to continue to, keep that in the back of your mind every time you go in, make sure you wrap.
Alex, go ahead.
Hey, Eddie, obviously going back to the tackling and just what you said, obviously things are happening really fast. You got to make split-second decisions. Can you take us through that mindset of, okay, I am going to try and go for a big play, or this is a moment where I've got to wrap up? Like, can you take us through you run around the field having to make those split-second decisions?
Oh, man, it happens so fast. So at times, it's like, you really don't think, too much. That's why I say you gotta kind of just keep it installed in your mind just throughout the game. Like, remind yourself, like, even if you go in, because sometimes you just break on the ball so fast and you just, deliver a hit, but it's just like things like that. You just got to keep installed. Like, all right, next time I got to wrap, even if you do get the guy on the ground, you just remember, okay, next time I got to bring my arms with it, or I'll try to hold a guy up and let somebody come in while I'm scripting the ball. It's really kind of hard to explain because you just playing so fast, and it's just instincts, you know what I mean? And that's when the instincts take over. So you just got to keep that installed in your mind throughout the game. Just continue to wrap.
So it's good to have Jackson's perspective there, and it does shed some light on the different things he's juggling at the safety position, and how he's hearing the right messaging, and the coaches seem to be telling him the right things there. Like, Eddie Jackson knows what he's supposed to do. I guess the problem I come away with is that it feels almost like it's treating him like some young player. Like, oh well, he knows what to do. He's just got to figure it out. But this is year 5, right? This is a veteran starting safety at this point, a safety who we've seen play at a high level. Like, it shouldn't be this question of like, oh, he's just got to work on his tackling technique because he's been in the NFL for 5 seasons now, right? I mean, this is not some young player that, you got to give him some time to develop, right? His tackling will come along eventually. Like, no, we're right in the thick of Jackson's career. Like, this is supposed to be his prime. Like, he's getting to the peak at this point. So if it hasn't clicked yet that he's supposed to wrap up and not just deliver a hit, I mean, how are we supposed to expect that it's going to click all of a sudden? What's going to be different the next time he hears it from his coaching staff, as opposed to the first 100 times he's heard it, presumably over the last 5 seasons he's been in the league? That's the part that I think I come away a little bit bothered with from the comments. As much as I want to be sympathetic about how difficult it is to play safety in the NFL, he's certainly reached a certain point to where the bar has been raised. We're not talking about a rookie 4th-round pick. Just a regular 4th-round pick, you might have a little bit more patience for a Deion Bush, another 4th-round pick, right? If this is Deion Bush we're talking about early in his career or something, yeah, 4th-round rookie, maybe you kind of have some of that patience. But for Jackson, we've already sort of set a certain bar that he's now being held to, I think justifiably, because of the level of play that we've seen. I think the question I have, though, is how much the missed tackling itself is the big issue here, and how much it might not be something else, and some of the rest of what we're seeing from Jackson in coverage. We'll take a look at why he's still valuable and he's still good, but why maybe the overall value in terms of his contract and some of the other aspects of his game might be where some of the deficiencies are, next on Locked On Bears. Hey, Bears fans, listen up. There's a cool new app you need to know about if you ever fill up your vehicle with gas. It's called Getupside. It's available in Google Play or the App Store, and it gives you cash back every time you fill up your tank at the pump, especially with gas prices as high as they are right now. And it seems like they keep going up. This is a great way to get a little bit of that money back to you. And it's super simple, super easy to use. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back just by downloading the Getupside app. You can get up to 25 cents per gallon cash back. And if you enter our promo code touchdown, you'll get a bonus 25 cents. So on your first gallon, you could get up to 50 cents per gallon in cash back. There's no catch. Every time you fill up, the money goes directly into your Getupside account, and then you can link your bank account for a direct deposit. You can go through PayPal, or if you'd rather have it cash out through like e-gift cards to Amazon or other stores, it's that simple. So again, head on over to the App Store or Google Play, download the Getupside app, enter in our promo code touchdown to receive up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first fill up. You download the Getupside app and enter the promo code touchdown. Touchdowns have been part of the problem with Eddie Jackson. And I think it's what I come back to here with the missed tackles issue, is that the missed tackles issue has kind of always been there, and it's always been frustrating. But even when Eddie Jackson was at his absolute peak from what we've seen so far in his career, at his best, right? In 2018, when this Bears defense is clicking and he's going back there and he's got, what was it, 4 or 5 interceptions that season and like multiple pick sixes, and he's flying around and the whole secondary is making plays. Eddie Jackson missed 13 tackles that season. He missed 21% of his tackle attempts. He had 13 missed tackles and 45 solo tackles, but based on Pro Football Focus's tackling numbers. So like for as far as tackle opportunities go, he was missing a higher rate of his tackles in 2018 when he was playing at his best than what he is right now. So far this season, he's missed 6 tackles in 7 games. It's been essentially one a game. The one game he didn't miss any tackles was actually against Detroit, which I suppose probably makes sense given the quality of wide receivers they were playing against in this game. And so like as much as it's extremely frustrating and it's visual and we see it when Eddie Jackson misses a tackle that he should make, he should not be missing any of these tackles. But it happens once a game. Literally, it has not happened more than once a game in any game this season, again, based on Pro Football Focus's missed tackle numbers. And so I guess I find myself sort of weighing one play, one missed tackle game compared to, most games are around, I think, 60 to 70 plays a game, or he's averaging, I think, 38 coverage snaps per game this season. So one missed tackle versus 37 other plays in coverage where he's not missing the tackle. Overall, you don't want those one bad plays. But I think the point that I come across here is you can live with those one missed tackles per game if he's making up with it with plays on the ball, the interceptions, and more importantly, even just the pass breakups. The stat that tells the story for me about Eddie Jackson's struggles this season is not 6 missed tackles in 7 games. It's a problem. It's frustrating. It's annoying. But the real issue, the one that I don't see Bears fans getting up in arms about nearly as much, is that Eddie Jackson has, of course, 0 interceptions the last 2 seasons. It's been since 2019 that he's picked up a pass. But more importantly, this season, the one that really jumps out to you is the big 0. How many pass breakups does Eddie Jackson have? How many PDs? Just swatting away a pass, not picking it off, but physically forcing the incompletion by getting his hand in between a receiver's hands? 0. 0 pass breakups, 0 interceptions this season. He has not been able to make plays on the ball. And for me, that is a much bigger problem than the missed tackles. We've seen, the missed tackle, was it last week or 2 weeks ago now? I'm still on the tail end of a head cold here, so remembering the exact game where Jalen Johnson got smoked out of the slot. And I think that was the Packers game where he got smoked by Devontae Adams, and then Eddie Jackson missed a tackle and Devontae Adams went on to score a touchdown. Like that's a really bad one where it directly results in a touchdown for the opposing team. And there have been a couple of those where it has resulted in a big play. But like Eddie Jackson's missed tackles have not been the difference between a Bears win and a Bears loss, right? I think for the most part, maybe that Devontae Adams one was as big of an impact play as you can, but missing the tackle last week was not 38-3. Eddie Jackson making that tackle in the first half or whatever is not going to be the difference in the Bears winning that game. But Eddie Jackson intercepting a pass, maybe a pick 6, certainly just pass breakups here and there are big enough impact plays to overcome that one missed tackle a game, and they just absolutely have not been there. You're not seeing the good coverage plays. He's being targeted a decent amount. He's giving up a career high yards per catch, 15.8 this season. It just hasn't been where he needs to be on time and accurate. And maybe some of that's a result of, the rest of the defense playing poorly when you have lesser players in coverage, Eddie Jackson can't be as aggressive and as free flowing. And, when there's more vulnerabilities at the slot cornerback spot and the other outside cornerback spot, not named Jalen Johnson, right? I think there is a team defense aspect to Eddie Jackson's struggles, to where in 2018, the pass rush is playing so well, although the pass rush has played well this season as well, but the other guys in coverage playing well. Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller was at his best. Prince Amukamara was still playing at a high level then, right? It allows Eddie Jackson to freestyle a little bit more, and he hasn't had a consistent strong safety next to him this season. Tashawn Gibson's been bad and then hurt. So it was Deion Bush then for a little while. Houston Carson, I thought, has been playing decently well, but Jackson hasn't had Amos to kind of be that solid, steady force next to him either. And it's not Vic Fangio, it's Sean Desai. I like what we've seen from Sean Desai, but right, there's a number of factors as to why Jackson played so well in 2018 that just aren't there in 2021. It's not to excuse, again, the individual missed tackles and some of the plays he's just been out of position and not quite his usual Eddie Jackson self, but I really think the lack of plays on the ball, not even just the interceptions, but the pass breakups are really the bigger problem here, because we could live with one missed tackle a game for the most part because we were able to live with it in 2018 and 2019. It's been the same rate of total number of missed tackles every year for Eddie Jackson. It's been in 13, 14, 14 the last 3 years before this year. 6 this year on a 16 or a 17 game season, has on pace for another 14, right? So he's missing at about the same rate, the same number of missed tackles total per season. Same Eddie Jackson as he was in 2018, but no interceptions, no pass breakups is a big deal. And so then all of this becomes a bigger deal when you check and see he's the 5th highest paid safety in the NFL in terms of average salary. That he's not playing like a top 5 safety, certainly. He's playing like a starting caliber safety. I think if his salary was much lower, we wouldn't be as upset about it. What is he, top 20, top 15, maybe 15, maybe a little rich. I mean, I haven't watched every safety in the NFL to be able to properly slot him. I think his PFF grade is definitely lower than top 20 at this stage in my career. But if he's making Adrian Amos money instead of Eddie Jackson money, maybe it's a little bit easier to swallow at this point, but you add the dollars on top of the expectations for the 2018 guy that we've seen. And that's why there's so much frustration around him. But I just think the frustration should be more so around the lack of playmaking than the lack of the tackling, because the lack of tackling has been there just about every season. So I think that's what I come away with, is that same old Eddie Jackson in tackling, not the same old Eddie Jackson in the playmaking. So that's where the frustration should be. And that's what I kept coming back to. As much as we want to talk about his tackling, it's easier to see the tackling. It's not as easy to see the coverage plays away from the ball, or the coverage plays he's not making, or the tight windows that he's not collapsing on, and things like that. It's just a little bit more obvious and visual to us. So I think that's what I'm looking for more of from Jackson moving forward. I'll be curious to see kind of how things change. He said later in this press conference that he feels like he's getting closer. He feels like he's a step away, and he almost had one actually on Tom Brady last week. So maybe he is getting closer and making those steps forward. But I'm curious to see how him and the rest of this team is affected without having Matt Nagy potentially for this game. The Bears head coach testing positive for COVID-19. We'll look at what impact that could have, and what role Matt Nagy plays then as a result, if he's there, if he's not, next on Locked On Bears. The Chicago Bears are 3.5-point underdogs at home against the San Francisco 49ers. The betting line right now at BetOnline.ag, your number one spot for all your favorite football action this offseason. Although they do all the other sports too. Basketball season starting up, hockey season, baseball World Series betting going on right now, plus soccer, golf, tennis, boxing, you name it, they have it at betonline.ag. Of course, the money line for this game, Bears plus 145, expecting a very low scoring game. The over-under set at 39.5. Glancing around the other games, that is projected to be the lowest scoring game in terms of point total in the over-under at betonline.ag. Maybe not surprising given the state of these two franchises right now. But if you want to make this game even more exciting, lay some money down, and you too could win big at betonline.ag. Sign up today for a free account and enter our promo code Locked On to receive your free welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline will give you even more money, free money, when you make a deposit. Free money is added to your account to help you bet even more at betonline.ag, where the game starts. When I'm hungry for a snack, I always start with my pantry to go to a delicious tasting Built Bar, really the best tasting protein bars ever made. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you are missing out, because they say it's a protein bar, but it doesn't taste like other protein bars. A lot of them are chalky or waxy or just plain hard to eat. But every single Built Bar is soft, chewy, covered in 100% real chocolate. And when you bite into it, you know you're getting something different. Comes in a bunch of delicious flavors. I have a box in my cupboard right now. I've got cookie dough chunk, which they don't have any more of on the website right now. I also have salted pretzel Built Bars, which they also don't have any more of on the website right now, but they are going through limited time flavors all throughout this month. Every 3 or 4 days, they're going to put a new flavor back up on the site. So you got to check it out early and often. When you do, make sure you use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, website built.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We'll see just how well this Bears team is built without their head coach around the organization, at least for now this week. Matt Nagy testing positive for COVID-19. He is vaccinated. So as he said yesterday, he has no symptoms at this point, but just, I think as part of their protocol, he gets tested every Monday or every other Monday, or just regular testing, and came back positive. Didn't even have, didn't have symptoms, didn't feel anything off, just happened to be carrying the disease. Thankfully for the vaccination, there's not really any lingering effects there. And that's such a big part of the COVID-19 vaccination. And one thing people tend to miss is like, well, you can still test positive if you're vaccinated. Yes, but it drastically reduces your risk of symptoms and drastically reduces your chances of being hospitalized or dying. So even though Matt Nagy tested positive, he's still enjoying some of the benefits of his vaccination. But then the question now becomes, will he be available for the team on Sunday? And I'm not an expert exactly on NFL protocols for COVID, but it's my understanding, I believe, that he has to have 2 negative tests. And I think they have to be sort of back-to-back days, right? So Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday. I'm sure he's going to be tested every day until then, because he's not feeling symptoms, right? They're just going to keep testing him until he gets back-to-back negative COVID tests. So presumably he could be back on Sunday, or I guess it's possible he could develop symptoms still and not be back on Sunday. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on NFL COVID-19 vaccination policies, but it sounds like the way that the Bears have done this is that they kind of went through this a little bit before, back during, I think, May OTAs, or was it June? Nagy was away from the team as a close contact for a COVID case. And so he went virtual while everyone else was still practicing. I don't think he ever had a positive test then, but they kind of went through this without him. So they've been through this process before. Nagy had said this week that when they first started preparing for last season, they had a COVID plan in place for every coach. So it's like, here's what every coach's duties are. And if he's unable to do those for COVID, who's his backup? Who's going to be his replacement? Almost like a coaching depth chart for team meetings and stuff. And so special teams coordinator Chris Tabor is I don't know if he has officially the assistant head coach title now that I think about it, but he's kind of always been that second in command of sorts, because new defensive coordinator, newer offensive coordinator. And I don't believe he has the special title, but he is the coordinator that's been around the longest in the coordinator role with Matt Nagy since 2018. And special teams handles both offense and defense anyway. So there's some synergy there that makes sense as to why he may be in that role. But one of the things I'm struggling with a little bit here with Matt Nagy missing, and I certainly don't want to rag on Matt Nagy while he's down, right? I, of course, wish him the best of health. I don't wish COVID on anyone, even though, I may think Matt Nagy is not the best head coach for the Bears and should probably lose his job at some point and go in an opposite direction, right? It's nothing personal. I want the man to be healthy and happy and have a good life and all that stuff, right? I'm trying to be delicate here as to not rail on the guy while he's literally has COVID. I mean, it's a very serious thing. And so I feel for him and I want him to get well soon. I mean, you can hear in my voice, I still have some head cold. It's not COVID. It's just a standard cold, but I have some sympathy certainly for what Matt Nagy is going through 100%. But with Nagy missing, and because he's not calling the plays, it's just kind of re-raised this question a little bit for me of like what his role is and what he does for the team. And I think back to the movie Office Space, when they bring in the consultants to evaluate everybody's job, and they have the little meetings in the conference room, and he looks at it and he goes, what exactly would you say you do here? Like he's asking the guy what his job is. And of course he's sort of pointing out that his job is kind of useless and they end up firing the guy. And it's kind of what I'm left here with Nagy. It's like, what would you say you do here? Right? You don't call the plays on either side of the ball. So you're not, I mean, you're helping sort of with offensive planning, but you have an offensive coordinator who does that and a quarterback's coach who coaches all the, you have position coaches coaching all the positions, and you have coordinators who are sort of coordinating each side of the ball. So then what exactly do you do here? And what are they missing by not having Nagy if he's going to miss the game, for example, and not on the sidelines, right? I mean, he's collaborating. He loves the word collaboration, and he's involved in game planning, right? He's another brain. I get it, right? I'm being a little bit facetious when he's obviously heavily involved in he's not sitting around doing nothing, right? He has a very clear role. But what exactly are they missing, right? I mean, I think when we think of the head coaches that don't call plays, we think of leadership, right? We think of culture, sort of being that voice and that face of the organization. But we have ex-Bears players like Javon Wims going on Twitter, kind of using emojis to criticize Matt Nagy. Anthony Miller's kind of been critical. Kyle Long in the past was definitely critical of Matt Nagy after his loss of the team. Maybe those are just disgruntled players that are bad character players anyway, but at the same time, you don't necessarily see a super well-disciplined Bears team. I mean, Javon Wims and Anthony Miller both got in trouble for fighting, and yet Bilal Nichols still punches a player in the face after the team warned him about Ryan Jensen specifically being an instigator after they warned Javon Wims. It's the same thing. Player on the other team that's an instigator, do not engage. They warned all the players. Player still does it. Happens again with Bilal Nichols. And by all means, Bilal Nichols doesn't seem like any kind of other head case or off the field issues or anything like that. I mean, he's kind of a jolly giant sometimes, it seems like, or a teddy bear type player. So, right, it's these little strands of like lack of discipline or lack of leadership or lack of coaching that kind of sip through. Or sometimes it feels like the Bears are a little bit unprepared. So, like, I don't know. Nagy on the sideline seems like he's a motivation guy, an energy guy. It seems like he gets them fired up, and it does seem like they've had a little bit more energy this season. So then that's there's value there, and there's a contribution there in addition to the game planning and the weak stuff. But then I don't know, does that just make Nagy then a really high paid cheerleader on the sideline? That's what I'm trying to figure out what exactly there's missing. I mean, a layer of communication. He's there to be a voice for players, right? It's not that he has no value whatsoever, that he's just taking up space, right? I'm not trying to totally, completely throw it all under the bus. I'm just a little bit curious what exactly they'll be missing here with Matt Nagy potentially sidelined, and what it could be when that voice is Chris Tabor instead. Not that Tabor has been this stellar special teams coordinator by any means. There's been plenty to be critical about how the Bears have kicked and kick returned over the last 3-4 seasons. But I'm just curious what it's like when a different voice is maybe a little bit more involved. Maybe the coordinators are a little bit more involved with less of Matt Nagy's presence in some of those discussions. We'll see. I don't think it's necessarily I think it's too simple to say, oh well, the Bears are going to be better because Matt Nagy's gone. Like he's this active negative force holding back the team. I think that's a little bit too strong. I think he does know quite a bit about football, and especially when he's not actually calling the plays, maybe he can be more of a positive influence in that regard. So again, I'm trying to be properly delicate here. It's more so, I think for some teams, like when Kyle Shanahan gets COVID or whatever for the 49ers or Cliff Kingsbury for the Cardinals, right? There's a very real feeling of like, oh, that's the brains behind the organization. When that's gone, oh boy, how are they going to hold up? But for the Bears, I'm more like, oh, I'm curious if there will be any major effect from this. I mean, the Bears were already struggling with him there. So, I mean, I guess it can't get worse than it was against the Buccaneers. It's more just a curiosity for me than anything else. Again, I'm trying not to just rail on Matt Nagy while he's down. Again, totally wish him the best of health, the best of luck, the best of happiness and all that stuff. I don't want anything bad to happen to him in any way, shape, or form. It's just file it under the curiosity file. And something we'll be keeping an eye on this Sunday, whether or not Matt Nagy is part of the sidelines. You can be sure we'll break this game down for you in depth, just like we do every week here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you subscribe to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show tomorrow, it'll be Crossover Thursday. So we'll be joined by Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers. Eric Crocker, a former NFL defensive back. I believe he played for the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken there. But don't quote me on that last part. But former NFL defensive back, co-host of Locked On 49ers, will be on the podcast with us. He knows this game, and they know this team really well. It's going to be a great conversation. They're two of the best hosts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you come back for that. And when you're done listening to the Locked On Bears podcast and the Locked On 49ers crossover, you can also hear Brian Peacock on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. He and former NFL scout Matt Williamson break down the league from all angles as well. So lots of good NFL content coming your way here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Hope you'll keep tuning in. Hope you'll keep coming back. Hope you aren't too off-put by the lingering nasalness of my voice. I think I got a couple more days in me before I fully shake whatever's left of this head cold. But in the meantime, I hope the podcast is still able to help you bear down.